Bless you, boys!
But now we're bound for Old St. John's where all the girls are dancing either way. And me jolly boys, we're all bound away.
All right, I guess it is the last time for that music. That was kind of fun as we worked through the Battle of Ontario, just kind of an extra wrinkle on the podcast. The first half of the music there and the first half of the call, obviously being Dean Brown, the legendary voice of the Ottawa Senators, and the music behind that. It's actually called Trumpeter's Cry. I don't know how many people know that. I didn't, to be honest with you, until I went looking for it. Sens fans, for whatever reason, it's just an old thing that's been here. They call it danger flutes, which is more fun, less intimidating, certainly. But you've heard it a million times, whether you've watched Senators home playoff games or been in the building for Sens games. They don't use it all the time, but I like that it's back. I like when teams, we've talked about this before, have a bit of a distinction, right? Things that only happen in one arena or two arenas, whether it be the Cannon in Columbus or the Danger Flutes in Ottawa. There's little things that happen in most arenas, perhaps not in Toronto, where they're not overly fun. Although even in Toronto, everybody knows, as we talk about the music that we started this up with and that we used through the Battle of Ontario, the Heave Away by the Fables for a long time. The victory song for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So even in a fairly mellow building, they can have their little traditions and things that they do, and then they eventually got rid of it. They went with the Maxime Nightingale from Slapshot instead. That's kind of cool as well. But Danger Flutes, I don't know. It just kind of makes me giggle. It sounds very regal. You can tell something important is going to happen. It's a silly nickname for it. Maybe one of you Sens fans, if there's a story behind that, wants to let me know. At Tall Can Audio on social media. You can follow us there. You can interact with us there. If you've got comments on the Danger Flutes or the Heave Away, for that matter, would love to hear from you. It is Matt Robinson with you on a Friday evening. I sort of was back and forth on whether or not this episode was going to happen, when it was going to happen. Sort of thought a little bit about doing something right after the game on Thursday night, and then changed my mind. A lot of you who listen to this show are Sens fans, and I sort of had a feeling that perhaps a Leaf fan wasn't who you wanted to hear from in that moment. Now, obviously, we have fans across the country from other fan bases as well, listeners from other fan bases as well. I don't know that you're fans. You listen. Whether you enjoy it or not is really not something I can answer for you. But just decided, you know what, let's let it breathe a little bit. Let's let Sens fans talk to each other, hear from each other, interact with other Sens media. It just decided not to go with it on Thursday, and I was going to do something a little earlier on Friday and just decided, I didn't decide anything on Friday. It just got away from me, and so here we are on Friday evening. We'll talk a little bit about the Battle of Ontario that is now over, what lays ahead for the Toronto Maple Leafs, some of the other series that have gone on or are still going on that maybe got neglected a little bit around here as our guests are big Sens fans. I'm a big Leafs fan, so obviously our focus has been on the Battle of Ontario. So we'll touch on a little bit of that. If you're curious about what's to come, the show's been in a bit of a speed wobble. Many of you have noticed, and that's a little bit due to the work that's going on around my home. It was a water leak. It got under the floor. The hardwood has to come out. It's a whole thing. Without getting into that, we've sort of been in a, there's been work being done, and then you've been in a waiting pattern, which makes it hard to make plans. Like some of you heard the episodes we tried to do while there was work happening outside the studio. That was untenable. So it's been difficult, anyway, to make plans, to get people booked, to get people in studio, frankly, to get myself in studio. I can tell you what's in the immediate future, and that is for tonight, just me. Sorry about that. Typically, on Monday, you would then have Rob, or last week, Hoffley sat in for him. Rob is out of town this weekend. The studio is not in good working condition, is not available for Monday anyway. So what you're going to get on Monday is our buddy Andrew Stoughton. And typically that would be more of a midweek kind of guest spot to talk some Blue Jays. He's going to record after the Sunday game against Cleveland, and we'll talk some baseball. The Jays have been a little bit neglected around here once the hockey playoffs started, although we did have a great conversation a week and a half or so ago with Arden Zwelling. If you missed that, highly recommend you go back, check it out at tallcanaudio.com or wherever you're hearing us right now. But we'll talk some Jays, we'll talk some baseball with Stoughton in the Monday spot, and then you'll hear Rob midweek. So we're sort of rotating the way our weeks normally look, right? Rob would normally be on that Monday morning show, and then we would talk to Stoughton or another guest midweek. We're just going to swap it out, and Stoughton will be here Monday for some baseball talk, Rob later in the week. And that's just trying to make it work. Everybody's schedule and with what we're competing with right now. So stick around for that. We're going to have a pint. It's Friday night. We're obviously going to have a pint. Hell, even if it wasn't Friday night, we're going to have a pint. This is from the Town Brewery, which is in Whitby, Ontario. This is their Better Days West Coast IPA. 6.2%. So nothing too crazy, but something kind of nice for a Friday night. Holy cow. Okay. Guys, that's nice. If you find yourself passing through Whitby or looking to do something online, maybe a delivery, this is crispy, a little bitter, right? When you think of a West Coast IPA, as opposed to that New England IPA, the New England's always kind of juicier, right? A little hazier. This is, when I think of a West Coast, I like a little snap to it, right? A little crisp, a little bite. And man, this has it in spades. Really nice. Perfect for a West Coast IPA. The Better Days, well, Toronto Maple Leafs are moving on. So for now, they're enjoying better days. And Sens fans, I think, can see better days ahead if they're not already enjoying them now. And I don't mean that to sound snarky, and this is exactly why I didn't do this Thursday night. It would be very easy to interpret anything I'm saying as kind of a slap in the face, and I don't mean it as such. Let's start with the Senators. When you compare where they've been a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, there's unquestionably been growth, been improvement around the organization, around the roster, around the attitude, around the fan base, around the ticket sales. Sens are living in better days in comparison to where they've been. And I don't think after what we saw in the playoffs that there's really any reason to doubt that there are even better days yet out in front of them. Now, this has been a bit of an unfortunate wrinkle, is what I would say, having had this curveball thrown at you if you're an Ottawa Senators fan. And by which I mean, I think most Sens fans came into this season, like seasons before, saying, let's take a step forward, let's play meaningful games down the stretch, and let's really push and possibly push right into the playoffs. And not only did the Sens do that, they didn't just squeak in to get smashed by a President's Trophy winner. They got in comfortably. And that was with some ups and downs midway through the season. We talked about it, right? They still looked a little inconsistent. And maybe there was going to be that November fall off again. And frankly, November wasn't great. And then Allmark goes down. Levi Merilainen comes in, saves the season, plays really well. Allmark comes back, finds his stride. The team feels a little more consistent, a little more steady. And they end up, I guess there was a moment or two in the last few weeks where you wondered if maybe Montreal might catch up. But really, Ottawa was home and cooled in that top wild card spot. So it wasn't a question of just getting in by the skin of your teeth. And it still, in that case, would have accomplished what some fans would have deemed to be a successful season. Play meaningful games down the stretch and make the playoffs. That happened, but it happened far more comfortably than that. Sens fans understood for the last several weeks we're going to be in, and we might be in that 7 spot instead of the 8 spot. And that's exactly what turned out to happen. And so I think where this got complicated is the fact that instead of having a little bit of what Montreal had, which is that, hey, glad we finally got here. And look, Montreal is more of a surprise. I don't think anyone thought they were going to get here this soon. But they had the luxury of not playing in the division. They go against Washington, who was the top team in the East. So there's this sort of built-in reassurance. Hey, we got here early. We're playing a team nobody believes we can beat anyway. We have no baggage, no history with this team. There's no rivalry here. And when we go down in 5, we all get to walk away going, perfect. We are on our way. We will be back. Everything that we said we hoped we would do, play meaningful games and make the playoffs, happened. Great year. Ottawa should have been able to have that too, but you get the baggage of the Toronto thing. Ottawa played meaningful games down the stretch. Ottawa played into the playoffs. Ottawa pushed a division winner to 6 games. But it comes with another loss to Toronto. The rivalry is there. The fact they show up in your building is there. The 4 series 20 years ago is there, which means nothing to any of the players on either side, but matters to a lot of us fans, certainly of a certain age. And so that's, I think, where this got emotionally complicated. Is we did everything we wanted to do, and we lost to Toronto. That sucks if you're a Sens fan, right? So I think it's important. I'll sort of wait to really, I don't want to tell you what you should take away from this season. Rob will be here next week. I'm sure we'll circle back to this as a fellow Sens fan with you guys. He can sort of commiserate or empathize. Word of the day, toilet paper. And we can kind of get into that. But this was unquestionably a step forward year for the Ottawa Senators. Jake Sanderson arrives on the scene. Tim Stützle bounces back after a disappointing year last year to closer to what people think he's going to be. Brady Tkachuk arrives on the international stage. Everyone in Ottawa already knew what he was. He gets to show that a bit at the Four Nations. Now, that came with a price. Obviously, he got hurt there, and in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion, was never quite the same afterwards. But you get a goaltender who, once he's healthy and finds his stride, looks like a number 1 goaltender that this team has badly needed for a while. So all of these things are positives. All of these things are clearly step forward, and all of these things would suggest there are likely much better days ahead because these guys are still young. Tim Stützle has another year or two of improvement ahead of him. And I'm not saying another year or two before he starts to fall off, but in a year or two, he hits probably his peak, and then that's where he exists for several years before his fall off begins. But I think there's still a year or two of improvement in front of that guy. There for sure is for Jake Sanderson, right? Defensemen take a little longer to develop, and he's already fantastic. When you look at the series, I would say, I don't know, man. I would say Dylan Cousins, a little bit disappointing. I know when he arrived from Buffalo, there was sort of a brief spike of you got him out of there, out of that bad situation, and now he's going to cook. And it never really, in my opinion, when I watched him, I wasn't overly scared of him in the playoffs. And the other guy that I would say stuck out to me on the negative side, and I'm just getting these out of the way before we can touch on a couple more positives, would be Nick Cousins. Maybe it's something about the name. That guy's gone. I can tell you as a Leaf fan, when Toronto played Florida 2 years ago, Nick Cousins was a menace. Still just like a fourth-line guy. You could move him up and down the lineup a little if you needed to. But he was in your face, and he was rattling cages, and he just stunk to have to play against. And so when he shows up in Ottawa, late in the offseason, you're sort of like, as a Toronto guy, you're like, I'm not really happy to see that guy playing for our division rival who's planning to be better this year. You couldn't have said then, I bet we see Ottawa-Toronto in the playoffs, but you knew the possibility was there, and I wasn't in love with the idea of Nick Cousins being an Ottawa Senator. Well, he gets hurt. He's blown out his knee, and he gets back just in time. But I got to be honest with you, that guy was invisible in the playoffs. He wasn't a menace. He wasn't irritating. I don't know if he couldn't get there fast enough. I don't know if he just wasn't feeling it. But you're talking about a team in Toronto that has the reputation of being like the most easily rattled team in the league. And Nick Cousins is supposed to be a rattle the cage kind of guy. And he did not make even the slightest impact. Now, I'm picking on a fourth line winger, but I think that also makes my point on what a positive experience this was for Ottawa. You know, if we're worried about a fourth line winger disappointing, well, he's a league min guy coming off a knee injury. You let him walk, and who gives a shit? The penalty kill got better as the series went on. So I don't know that it's a question of he should have been swapped back out for Highmore, but I probably would have made that move a little later in the series. I know they started with Highmore and then went back to Cousins, but Cousins, he was just not effective at all. Tyler Clevin was a pleasant surprise. I probably should have been more prepared for him to stand out in the playoffs. His game just feels like it was going to translate that way. And he's had some ups and downs just to get to a point where he's a regular in the Ottawa lineup. But he looked good in the series, and he looked better and better as it went on. That's a guy who I don't think any team would have a problem dropping in as your third pair lefty. And I was going to say, to just allow him to be a physical stay-at-home presence, there were moments where he was holding the line and creating plays at the Toronto blue line. I was impressed with that guy. And I mean, obviously, we can talk about other players if you want. I have no idea how healthy Nick Jensen was. I have no idea how healthy Brady Tkachuk was. Not particularly, I don't think. But like Jake Sanderson was good and got better. But I think we all sort of thought that would be the case. Tim Stützle started slowly and got better. By the end of that series, I was a lot more nervous when he was on the ice than I was earlier on. I think in the first 3 or 4 games or whatever it is, did he not have just the one assist? Then he starts wiring shit home on the power play and making dangerous plays. He did get another one into an empty net. So I think the top performers largely performed, but to me it's just more interesting to look at the one or two that didn't, and then maybe the one or two that pleasantly surprised. And Clevin would be a guy who jumped out for me in that regard. And I'm not alone in that. I'm not claiming that's an original. A lot of people, I think, were very impressed with Tyler Clevin. So, look, there's some questions in the offseason. Claude Giroux is a UFA. I would be nervous about committing term to him, but maybe he won't ask you to. To me, he reminds me a little of John Tavares in the sense that he chose to go home to Ottawa. I can't imagine that guy wants to uproot himself again to go sign a 1 or 2 year deal in, I don't know, Chicago, wants to take a step forward. Like a team like that, who's looking to maybe overpay a little bit to get some veteran leadership. We see that every summer. I don't think he's going to want to do that. So can you find a number that works for him, that works for the team? I would imagine so. And then after that, like, I don't know. There's just a lot of guys there. Like Ridley Gregg isn't leaving. Brady or Stützle aren't leaving. Sanderson or Shabbat aren't leaving. Like, there's your big key guys are locked up. And so it's just kind of some choices. What do you want to do with Highmore? Right? Like that kind of thing. You can bring him back. You can let him go. You can replace that guy. Do you want to keep Nick Cousins? I don't know. You can do it if you want. I wouldn't, but you could. It's not going to be, I wouldn't think, a difficult year for Ottawa's management in the offseason as far as what's leaving. Right? I don't think there's a lot of really difficult decisions there. The more interesting decisions will be what can you bring in? Because Ottawa's It's been a while, but Ottawa's been up against the cap. So if you want to bring in something significant, there would have to be some roster massaging to be done. But I think they might be tempted, and perhaps not unreasonably, to not stand pat. You always build around the edges a little bit and tinker a little bit, but just trust that, Brady's going to be healthy again, Jensen will be healthy again, Stutzla's going to be another year better, Cousins gets a full off season under your training staff, then a full, training camp in September. Dylan Cousins, that is. I would not be surprised if this is a quieter off season. You'll certainly bring in some things around the edges. But I think this group showed that we are on the right path. And so nothing crazy needs to happen here. That would be my Ottawa takeaway as I grab another sip here of the better days, as I think Ottawa has arrived in those better days. On the Toronto side of it, I suppose it's better days in the sense that it's better than going home, which they've done, 8 out of 9 years, 7 out of 8 years, whatever the hell it is, after one round. But they're moving on to play Florida. I think most people would quite reasonably say Florida is the favorite, despite Toronto being the home team. My takeaway from this series is how quickly people wanted to be first to say, oh my God, it's happening again. They're doing it again. And I can't say it never crossed my mind, but we sort of did this thing, right? You guys sort of followed my journey through my ABVs in the beers I was having. For me, it never got higher than that 6.7%. Never even reached like a double dry hopped 8%. Never got to like an 11% Imperial Stout. Now, had they lost on Thursday and been going 7, you'd have seen a lot of that. I would have gotten there. But what's funny to me is the number of people in the media, in the fan base, online, who all sort of said, I see this as being Toronto in 6. And then after 5 games, with Toronto being within 1 win of advancing, went, oh my God, the sky is falling. Well, are you giving them 6 games or aren't you? And we've talked about this before in other situations, not involving the Leafs. It's the path. Toronto's up 3-0. That's an incredible start. And they led the series, obviously, the rest of the way. They're 1 win away. But once that happens, and then Ottawa wins 2, which was always going to have to happen for Toronto to win in 6, everybody lost their mind. Now, you'd have seen if we were doing this beer ABV thing. If Toronto goes down 2-0 at home and then comes back to win 4 in a row, you probably see me after game 2 at a 9% double dry hopped IPA. To me, that's an oh my God, it's happening type of fear. Ottawa takes 2 from you at home. You're down 0-2. Yeah, we can get scared about that. But it sort of took the fun out of that beer exercise to have Toronto get up 3-0. And now it was just a question of how long does it take to close it out. Was it possible that Toronto could blow it and be, what is it in hockey? Have there been only 4 times? I know Philly did it to Boston. There's the Leafs one back in the 40s. I think the Kings did it to the Sharks. And maybe I'm missing one. But it's only happened 3 or 4 times in history. And so, yeah, it would be hilarious for everyone else not in blue if it happened here. And all the baggage that goes with that. I talked about Ottawa fans like, hey, we accomplished all our goals, but do we really have to lose to these fucking guys? It comes with some baggage. The baggage, if Toronto had have gotten up 3-0 and lost to Ottawa, you're never living that down. There's nowhere to go. That would have been the final slap in the face. But once Toronto got up 3-0, I just never got all that nervous when they lost Game 5. And even when they lost when they lost Game 4. And obviously it ticked up a little after you lost Game 5. But it just... I guess in my head it was, do I really believe Ottawa's going to win another 2 in a row before Toronto wins 1? And I guess I just didn't. I just never had that belief. But man, it was so important to members of both, Toronto and Ottawa media groups. Not everybody. But how many times do you see the meme? They've planted the seed. Listen, that seed has been planted and grown into a fucking rock-hard oak tree. Ottawa didn't plant a seed. But it was just, we so badly want to tell that story. We so badly want to write about, oh my God, they're falling apart again. There was just no evidence to suggest that. If Ottawa had pumped Toronto in Game 4 or 5, and, Marner was lobbing shit over the glass like he did in Game 7 against Montreal, and Willie was invisible. Willie was invisible in Game 5, I guess I should point out. Not good. It just wasn't there, but everyone wanted it to be there. And at least for me, I just, going into Game 6, yeah, my craft beer measuring stick went from 6% to 6.7%. Had they lost Game 6, yeah, we're probably into 9-10%. We're probably into Turtleback rum from North of 7 Distillery right there in Ottawa. Frankly, it didn't feel that way to me. It would have. We could have got there. But we didn't. And if you're going to predict Toronto in 6, there is no reason to melt down until they don't get it done in 6. Now, they're in trouble here against Florida. And I don't think they were outstanding against Ottawa. I don't think you saw a division winner with tons of playoff experience just dust the new kids and walk over them. That didn't happen. And the one thing that was making me, if you want to use the word nervous, that's fine, wasn't necessarily now it's been 4 games, it's been 5 games, we're playing 6 games. It was that Ottawa was getting better as we went. And I did have a legitimate fear that Stolarz might be getting tired. He'd never played 6 games in a row before. When you're up 3-0 and you got a chance to close it out in 4 or 5, and your goalie who isn't used to a heavy workload might get a chance to have 4 or 5 days off, I was all over that idea. And it didn't come to fruition. He had to keep playing. And Sanderson was getting better. Stützle was getting scarier. So it wasn't just that oh my God, anything can happen in a Game 7 if we can get there. The worst team in the league can beat the best team in the league for 1 game. That's on the table. It was that at the same time you're inching towards it, your opponent is getting tougher to eliminate. On top of the mental bullshit that you might be carrying around for yourself. So it just bugged me. The number of Toronto radio shows and podcasts and writers that are walking around saying, oh man, that Toronto fan base, they're getting pretty nervous. They can see all this happening again. And then going into their studio or sitting down to their computer and be like, here's why it's happening again, Toronto. You're fanning the flames a little bit. And for some of you, your fandom is showing. Your own fear is showing. That fear you're projecting and pretending is only coming from the fans. Fans respond to the story being presented to them largely by the media. And that sounds like such a corny, the media. No. If you read nothing, you don't... Maybe it's an unfortunate or an unpleasant comparison. If you watch nothing but Fox News all the time and you believe you are getting straight news, then yeah, your view of the world is going to be a little fucked. And so if you're doing nothing but watching alarmist Toronto Maple, and it sounds a little silly now, right, in comparison to the real world. But if all the media that you read is telling you the sky is falling for the Toronto Maple Leafs, even while they're up 3-1 in a series, with home ice advantage and division winners and stars up and down the lineup, I guess you can talk yourself into that, yes, the sky is falling. It was an annoying story to follow. Now, Panthers next. The sky might fall. And it might fall fast, and it might fall and flatten you completely. Look, sometimes underdogs win. And that's what Toronto will be in this. And even that sounds a little silly. Like I said, Toronto has home ice. Toronto is the division winner. But I believe the last tally I saw on this was that across the regular season and playoffs over the last, I guess this would be 3 seasons, Toronto is 3-12. Has either won 3 of 12 or is 3-12 against Florida. Either way, it's not good. Not good. And they dusted Tampa. And Tampa was red hot. And Tampa has a Vasilevsky. And Tampa has a Hedman. And a Kucherov and a Point. And look, hey, Toronto's got a Matthews and a Marner and a Nylander. But those guys I just mentioned in Tampa are proven playoff performers, and so far the Toronto guys really aren't. You know, maybe a final point on that Battle of Ontario is that the Leafs stars were fine. They didn't shrink from the moment like they have in the past. But you wouldn't really say any of them grabbed the series by the throat and said, this isn't happening again. I'm taking over right now. A lot of their points got piled up on the power play early on in the series. I thought Nylander was incredible in Game 6, but he badly needed to be after being brutal in Game 5. Marner was fine. Tavares got almost all of his scoring done early. And for all the talk that I've said over the years that it's always Toronto that can't score in the playoffs and they don't have the depth scoring, well, Simon Benoit gets you a goal. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Max Domi, Max Pacioretty. I think Scott Laughton. No, it was Steven Lorentz earlier in the series. Toronto got some help from their bottom 6 or for some of their less heralded guys. And so I thought the Toronto Stars, the Big 4, the Big 5, were okay. But I didn't think they were great, and I didn't think they stole the series. I didn't think they took over the series. They could do that against Florida. Like the upside, when I say they could do that against Florida, that's not my prediction. I'm saying it's theoretically possible that Marner and Matthews and Nylander are better than Reinhart, Barkov, I guess Verhaeghe or Matthew Tkachuk. I don't know what to make of Matthew Tkachuk. He's only playing like 13 minutes a night against Tampa. Is that because he's still really hurt? Or is it because they were pounding on Tampa and he didn't have to play any more than that? I don't know. We're going to find out. Unless they're pounding on us and he doesn't have to play anymore. Toronto has the rigging to hang with these guys. The question is, will they? That's always been the question. How many times have we said that on this show? This team will go as far as their stars take them. So that's where we are in this particular. Like Brad Marchand is the boogeyman from Boston who's now a part of that. It's like some weird Marvel Comics crossover thing where multiple villains have come together to fight you at once. But he's not what he once was. They've lost some key pieces on their blue line. They've lost some key pieces, from their depth. Steven Lorentz is in Toronto. It's just a fourth-line guy, but you chip away at it. Ryan Lomberg leaves for Calgary. It's just a fourth-line piece, but it chips away at it. But that third line with Lundell and Luosterainen that are playing with Brad Marchand, that's better than Toronto's third line by a significant margin. Marchand. I got Brad Marchand already in my head. By a significant margin. So we'll see. It's that playoff experience. It's that defending Stanley Cup champion thing that we can talk about. Are they out of gas, maybe? Having gone to the Cup finals 2 years in a row? Or did they just do enough down the stretch and knew they could flip the switch when they needed to? Well, what they did to Tampa would suggest it's the latter. And I think some of what Toronto is going to have to count on here is, it's funny, it's things that Florida would almost do to themselves. Are they tired? That'd be great. That'd be really, really great if Florida's fatigued and just doesn't have it in him to go deep again. Could Bobrovsky run out of gas and they don't have the depth in goal anymore to support that? That'd be awesome. Like that would be cool. Is Brad Marchand no longer what he once was? Is Matthew Tkachuk not healthy enough to really contribute more than 13 minutes a night? You're counting on an awful lot of things to go your way, and an awful lot of it is out of your control. It's hoping that Florida isn't what they are supposed to be. That's not a great position to be in, because those, like I said, are things you can't control if you're Toronto. You know, is it theoretically possible Stolarz goes all world again? Yeah. But he faced Florida 3 times this year and didn't look particularly good in any of them. I don't know what to read into that usual, you know, a goalie used to play for a team. Do the shooters on that team who used to practice against him know him, or does he got the book on them? I don't know. Maybe there's something there in one direction or the other. Probably not, though. Sergei Bobrovsky is a Hall of Famer. He's a Cup winner. He's a multiple-time Vezina winner. They have the edge in goal. Could Matthews go all world and score 5 or 6 goals in this series? Yeah. Haven't seen any evidence it's coming, but it's theoretically possible. They need Marner to score, which isn't usually his game. He's been the guy who gets it to the guy who scores. But something's up with Matthews. He can't score. Marner has to score a bit more. Nylander can't have a Game 5 like he did against Ottawa. He's got to be great all the time. And Tavares is going to have to be able to be at least as good as Sam Bennett. And Bennett's faster. Bennett is more physical, dirtier. But Tavares is probably a slightly better shooter still. Better setup guy still. You know, can Pacioretty hang? Can you develop a third line with any sort of identity? Toronto's got a lot of questions to answer. And look, we'll delve into that series as it approaches and as it moves on. We don't have to go too much further tonight. But as you can see, as I'm sitting here and trying to figure out what has to happen for Toronto to win, all Toronto's guys have to be great. And you need Florida to fuck some things up. Their goaltending can't be good. They can't be fully healthy, and it'd be great if they retired from 2 long cup runs. You're asking them to shoot themselves in the foot at some point. That's not where you want to be. Hoping for better days. I did want to talk briefly about the Edmonton series. I'll be honest with you, I had a hard time staying up for a lot of it. I'm getting old. I'm getting tired, and these late games are killing me. Look, this was LA's shot. There's no way around that. That was LA's shot. 4th time, you passed them this time to get home ice. You looked good. You looked consistent all year. An unbeatable team at home, basically. Edmonton, frankly, in shambles. Unless they were doing what Florida did. Just rope-a-dope down the stretch. You know, McDavid, he's hurt. Could he come back? Well, maybe he could have. We don't know. But let's just sit out, rest, wait. Draisaitl in and out of the lineup. You know, you didn't get to see Evander Kane back. Trent Frederick was a big trade deadline pickup. He was sort of hurt and back in and out. The big one was Ekholm. You know, that was supposed to be... It sounds so condescending when you say it this way, but that's supposed to be the security blanket for Evan Bouchard that allows Evan Bouchard to go do the things that Evan Bouchard does. You need somebody to hang back and take care of business in the neutral zone and in your own zone. And when he went down, it just looked like the final blow for this year's Oilers. It's just not your year. You don't have it going. You're not healthy. Stuart Skinner hasn't looked good. It's just not going to be your year. And sure enough, LA jumps out. 2 quick wins at home. And everyone goes, see? And it's not like you write off the Oilers permanently. But sometimes it's just not your year. You took the long run last year. Maybe you're a little fatigued, a little beat up, a lot of injuries. You go out, solve your goaltending this summer. But that wasn't the way it was going to go for Edmonton. They just start bringing those big guns back out. And look, they can just decide. We're only playing 15 minutes tonight, but it'll be the last 15 minutes and we will overwhelm the fuck out of you. And they're doing it with Calvin Pickard in goal. And they're doing it without Matthias Ekholm. You know, you're trying to run Bouchard out there with Nurse. But all of a sudden, you know, you get Kane back in there and Frederick starts to look a little bit better. Jeff Skinner. Not Stuart Skinner. Jeff Skinner. I almost feel bad for the guy. Had this like all-time long iconic run of never making it to the playoffs. Signs in Edmonton, a surefire ticket to playing in the playoffs. Plays in game one, and then, oof, you stink, healthy scratch. That's tough. That's tough. But Edmonton goes down 0-2, comes back and wins 4 in a row. And I look at LA, and I don't know what you do. It reminds me a tiny bit, although they sort of successfully rebuilt on the fly. They still have Doughty. They still have Kopitar. But they go out, you know, they're able to get some youth into their lineup at the same time. But it reminds me a little of what was going on with Toronto. You just kept running into Tampa or Boston, and it's like you have a really good team, but it's not a great team, and it's not better than these two teams, and so they are going to keep kicking you to the curb while they go and win things. LA has had to play Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers 4 years in a row. And this was the year where you pass them in the regular season, you get home ice advantage, you go get a goalie. Adrian Kempe takes another step forward like a top 6 star. The Oilers are hurt. 2-0 lead at home. You go back to Edmonton, lose, out. What do you do now? Because some of those other complementary pieces, your Philip Deneaus or your Anze Kopitars, aren't getting any younger. Doughty, certainly. I'm not saying you rebuild, but I'm also not saying you just run it back and hope you don't end up facing Edmonton again in round 1. And even if you don't, like, there's a good chance you're going to have to beat them to get where you want to go. Like, you play somebody else in round 1 and you beat those guys, and hey, look, here we are, round 2. Edmonton waiting on you again. I don't know what you do in that situation. All you can do is keep trying to build the best team you can, but significant pieces of it are aging out, and the Oilers aren't going away. It's a tough spot. To circle back to Edmonton, what do you do in goal now? They clearly want Stuart Skinner to be their guy. They have shown that over and over and over. But he hasn't been. Even last year when they went to the Cup final, they had to use Pickard a little bit. Stuart Skinner wasn't any good all year. Sort of, at best, up and down, but more down than up. You get into the playoffs, he's not any good. You bring in Pickard, you win 4 in a row, and Pickard is a career backup. He's a journeyman, and he'll battle for you. Like, he fights hard. But are you going to start him in game 1 in the next round against Vegas? Or do you risk going back to Skinner and having him blow it only to turn around in game 2? Only to turn around in game 2 or 3 and have to go back to Pickard anyway? They're in a bad spot there in goal. Now, Vegas wasn't overly convincing in round 1 either. Minnesota punched them in the face early in the series and said, we're here for a fight. Now, they ended up losing that fight. And so maybe Vegas has found their stride a little bit, but I'm not as afraid of Vegas as I have been in previous years. But man, you got to have your goaltending sorted out. And I don't know what you do if you're Edmonton. I guess you ride Pickard till it stops working. But that would make me super uncomfortable. Especially even then, knowing your safety net is to go back to Stuart Skinner. Phew. But man, full marks to the Oilers. The boogeyman that lives in the closet of every LA Kings fan. Look at us. We have had a great year. We are unstoppable at home. We are second in the division. Wham, wham, wham. Oh, we're done. We're out. Fuck. It's just the way the playoffs work sometimes, right? I think you might be seeing it in Toronto here in round 2. Hey, we won the division. Got the wild card team. Got that monkey off of it. Wham, wham, wham. Ah, fuck. We'll see. Game 7, Saturday, Dallas, Colorado. That's been the money series. Speaking of teams that have been injured, like Dallas, just hanging around, stay in the fight long enough. If you move on to the second round, get Heiskanen back, get Jason Robertson back. Whew, man, that could be incredible. But that's been an awesome series. Looking forward to Game 7 of that one on Saturday. That's probably enough, eh? This has already been longer than I thought it would be. As is often the case when I come in to do these solo shows. We'll just chat for a few minutes. It ends up being Matt yammering along for a long time. But hey, what does it say about you? You're still here. Who's really to be judged? Like I said, Andrew Stoughton will be on the Monday show. We'll talk some Blue Jays with him, some baseball with him. And frankly, it wasn't a bad time to neglect the Jays while the hockey playoffs started up. The trip through Houston, the trip through Yankee Stadium was a bit of a horror show. A little better, took 2 or 3 from Boston this week. As I sit here right now, they are tied with Cleveland in Game 1 of that series that'll take place over the course of this weekend. And then, we'll talk to Stoughton before the Jays head out west. And then you'll be able to look for Rob either Wednesday or Thursday morning. We haven't pinned down the exact day yet. But we'll do more of an all-encompassing kind of Monday-style show with him when we get him back in here. Hope you've all enjoyed the first round of the playoffs here. Good stuff still to come, obviously. We are just weeks away now from the CFL as well, which has me very excited. Lots going on. I'm sure some of you are watching those basketball playoffs. I am not one of them. I'm sure it's awesome. I love that for you. Oshawa Generals in the OHL final against the London Knights. That went really good last year. Hopefully it goes somewhat differently this year. At this point, it's time to just get out of here. Probably what the Oshawa Generals are also saying right now. Thank you all so much for listening. Like I said, Stoughton on Monday, Rob midweek, and then we'll figure it out from there. Hopefully we'll have things a little more under control on the studio front and we can get back on turn. Honestly, I appreciate your patience, appreciate you sticking with us as things have been a little bit off kilter. We're doing our best here. My name is Matt Robinson. Have yourselves a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday morning.
That's it. I cannot work under these conditions. If anybody wants me, I'll be downstairs at McDougal. Call the weekend guy. I don't care.